I'm just going to tell you right now, the numbering on the Bubble Bobble series is a bit of a mess. Every so often, Taito returns to the series and puts a new number on a game, apparently arbitrarily. We've already had a Bubble Bobble 2 on the Famicom. That was Rainbow Islands, which carried the subtitle The Story of Bubble Bobble 2. And not to mention that Europe got their own Bubble Bobble 2. But here's the game that was released in Japan with just the title Bubble Bobble 2. The original Bubble Bobble was an arcade game, but it also had this release on the Famicom disk system. And of course, that game is one of the most beloved classics of the 8-bit era. If you know anything about this game, you know that it's absurdly expensive. It doesn't crack the big two, but depending on what people are chasing at the time, it is in the top 5 most expensive Famicom games. The plot of Bubble Bobble 2 is that Bub and Bob's girlfriends have been abducted. But not that Bub and Bob. This is Bub and Bob Jr. The wizard who did it still turns them into dinosaurs, though. But since all dinosaurs have the power to shoot bubbles, the two set out to clear 80 stages of action and rescue their girlfriends. Like the original, Bubble Bobble 2 is a single-screen action game. Well, mostly. And your goal on every stage is to eliminate all of the enemies. A jumps, while B will spit out a bubble. A small enemy that you directly hit with your bubble will become trapped within it. And then if you pop that bubble by running or jumping into it, then the enemy will go flying and turn into tasty food when they hit the ground. The food's only worth some extra points. Large enemies will take a lot of bubbles to defeat, though what that really means is you sit there and mash a stream of bubbles at them. Bubbling up enemies isn't the only thing you can do with your spit. You can also jump on bubbles to reach out-of-the-way places, though jumping on them requires a bit of precision, and the bubbles move up pretty quickly after you fire them. A lot of stages have some kind of air draft that pulls bubbles towards it, so the behavior you get out of bubbles may not be quite what you expect. Something to be aware of with the stages in Bubble Bobble 2 is that you can move off the sides of the screen and reappear at the far end. So you can drop off the bottom and appear at the top, or on stages where it's open on the sides, walk off the right and appear on the left. You can jump up through some thin floor sections, but thicker ones will completely obstruct your movement. A new trick for Bubble Bobble 2 is that you can hold down the B button to charge up. When you're fully charged, you can float through the air like a balloon, and you'll have to use this on some stages to get around. Releasing the B button when you're charged will spit out a whole cluster of bubbles. If you take too long on a stage, then a ghost will appear forcing you to hurry up. It'll relentlessly chase you until you're dead, or you've finished off all of the other enemies. There are a lot of extra items that will appear on stages for you. Some of them just appear on the stage when you start out, and you'll have to rush over to collect them before they vanish. The hearts give you an extra hit point. When you start out, you only have 1 hit and anything touching you will kill you, but you can collect a maximum of 5 hearts. If you collect the diamond on a stage, when you defeat all of the enemies, extra food will appear at the end. Shoes will permanently speed you up, and candy will permanently make your bubbles shoot further. Or at least permanently until you lose a life. Collecting the small crystals will make a door appear, and entering the door will take you to a bonus stage. A clock will freeze all of the enemies on the stage for a while, though you can still get hurt by them if you run into them. Pencils are really vital, since they grant you an extra continue. By default, you only have 5 continues, and that's all you get to beat the whole game with. There are also bubbles that float in that will have some kind of effect if you pop them. The lightning bolts will shoot out in the direction opposite to what you're facing, and defeat any enemy in their path. Water will flow, carrying you and any enemies with it. You'll be fine, but the enemies won't. The whirlwind works like water, only it goes up, and the fire will make a pool of flame on the ground. It's tough for Bub and Bob to move in it, and it kills enemies outright. The best thing you can get in a bubble is a star, and it releases an explosion that will kill any enemies nearby. And when I say nearby, I mean about 1/3 of the screen. Every 20 stages is a boss stage, and these levels break the rules. There's one big enemy, and you can't bubble it. Instead, you have to collect a potion that will turn your bubble into a special bubble. This is the stage 20 boss, and the level scrolls side to side, and it takes him a long time to go from the top of the screen to the bottom. Since you really can only get 1 or 2 hits in on him safely each pass, he takes a while to defeat. This boss on stage 40, on the other hand, doesn't take too many hits to defeat, but he keeps forcing these spiked platforms lower toward you. If you defeat a boss, then you'll get to a bonus stage, and these are the same bonus stages that you'd reach if you went through a door. You might have to play volleyball against an enemy, bouncing the ball back and forth, and whoever has the high score when time runs out wins. This minigame suffers from it being very difficult to control where things are going. The other minigame is more straightforward. You're just collecting a bunch of gems before time runs out. Whoever has the most wins. One of the big disappointments of Bubble Bobble 2 is that they've removed the 2-player simultaneous mode. If you choose to play 2 players, you'll just alternate turns. That has the downside of making the game significantly harder, since normally if you die, the stage doesn't stop, you just reappear in the corner. In 2-player mode, if you die, then you have to do the whole stage from the beginning. This is the last Bubble Bobble game on the Famicom, but it's far from the end of Bub and Bob. Bubble Bobble will get a few sequels before being put on the shelf for a while, while the cute dinosaurs move over to Puzzle Bobble, which itself was an enormous hit and became its own series. Bubble Bobble 2 is almost completely unknown in Japan. I think it suffers from being a very late Famicom release and having so few copies around that nobody really played it. I didn't even find any comments from Famicom collectors complaining about how expensive it was. The very few people who played it seemed to like it, but that's a sample size of 2 from the comments I could find. For my own view, well, when I played my first game of Bubble Bobble 2, I wasn't really having a great time with it. All of the stages have some gimmicks, and mechanically things feel kind of stiff. A lot of basic things feel unnecessarily difficult. But as I kept going, I wound up warming up to it a lot. I don't think it feels as good as the original Bubble Bobble, but it's as good of successor as we were going to see on an 8-bit platform. It's a solid game that might be a little overstuffed for its own good.